The New York Mets are still searching for that first series sweep of the season as the Cardinals grabbed the last game in this three-game set on Wednesday. Carlos Carrasco got knocked around a bit. The Mets got to Steven Matz early, but did not score enough runs to compete with the Cardinals team that ultimately scored 10 runs on the day. But the big story ended up being a benches clearing incident between the Mets and the Cardinals. Nolan Arenado got a pitch up and in, and he did not like it. That caused both teams to storm the field. Pete Alonso didn't like the way he was tackled from behind. I'm going to talk about the incident. I'm going to talk about the game. And I'm also going to give you an update on the Mets farm system in this latest edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500. Use the code Locked On at checkout. All right, so talking about this game on Wednesday, early on, it looked like your typical Steven Matz outing. I was ready to throw on the old Steven Matz shirt for the show today. I was ready to celebrate the fact that the Mets did not end up getting to sign him this offseason, because not only did that result in the offseason additions of Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett, but because we, as Mets fans, wouldn't have to see starts like this for Matz every fifth day. Because it looked like that typical Steven Matz outing where things don't go his way. His face starts to get red. He starts pounding the glove. You could, visualize the steam pouring out of his ears, and you just think, here it is, a 7 spot in the second inning, and it just didn't happen quite that way. The Mets did get a nice little rally going. Pete Alonso, nice base hit. Eduardo Escobar to spark the frustration of Matz. Had a pop-up that if Nolan Arenado was playing third base, likely gets caught, but it finds the smallest bit of real estate in the outfield to put 2 runners on. He gets a couple of outs, but then Luis Guillorme gets a hit that deflected off of Matz's glove. So again, the blood pressure was rising. The emotions were boiling to the surface. It looked like Matz was just going to blow up. He then ends up giving up a double to Tomas Nido, a guy who caught him a bunch throughout his career. I thought it was very interesting, the players that Buck Showalter went to in this game. Gives Jeff McNeil a day, has J.D. Davis in the lineup, has Nido in the lineup, has Luis Guillorme in the lineup, had a lot of guys in the lineup who were teammates with Steven. Obviously, that's just natural because it's only a couple years removed from when Matz was a Met. But Nido in particular, obviously it was a day game after a night game, but I thought this really was a great opportunity for him offensively to get in there and go up against someone that he knows very well, a left-handed pitcher, and he gets the big knock, a double, which scored 2. Brandon Nimmo got a double, and the Mets had a 4-1 lead. The way Carrasco has been pitching early in the game, you thought that might be enough, but Carlos Carrasco ends up getting knocked around a bit. In the third inning, he gave up a single to Tommy Edman and one to Paul Goldschmidt. These were singles on the ground, though. It wasn't like he was hit super hard. And then Nolan Arenado got the big hit to score both of those guys, just dumping one opposite field, a soft liner that made it into the outfield. Just good hitting. And at times, you have to understand all these guys are not going to pitch to a sub-3 ERA all season. They're going to give up runs. And this was the first outing where we saw that from Carrasco. He ends up giving up 8 runs, 7 of them earned. But I really think he pitched better than that line would indicate. Obviously, he gets knocked out in the 4th inning where he gave up a double to Yadier Molina. He hit Edmundo Sosa. Then he gives up another double, this one to Tommy Edman. He gets a line out right into the glove of Luis Guillorme. Gets a big strikeout, though, of Tyler O'Neill. And it looked like he was about to pitch himself out of it because he gets that strikeout. That allows the Mets to put Nolan Arenado on first base with an intentional walk. The bases were loaded. He had Corey Dickerson up, had him ahead 0-2, but I think there was one play that almost lost the game for the Mets. Sometimes it's just momentum shifting moments. And the 0-2 pitch, Tomas Nido unable to block it, a nasty changeup that just went right through the 5 hole. And I know that it's a leap to say that Carrasco strikes out Dickerson if Nido catches that ball, but there's something to be said about when you're a pitcher and you are holding on for dear life with 2 runners in scoring position, as Carlos Carrasco was. You get the huge strikeout for the second out of the inning on Tyler O'Neill after that line out. So you're in this position where you've now avoided Nolan Arenado by keeping first base empty before he comes up. You have the bases loaded. Everything is available to you. You just need an out. And then that second pitch of the at bat, you go up 0-2, but it squirts through. And now the force plays are off around the diamond. A run comes around and scores. So that feeling, that the adrenaline, it just goes away. It dissipates just a little bit. And that change, I think, could have made the difference in that last pitch. And he ends up giving up a hit to Dickerson, and the Mets pull him. And I think at that point in the game, that was Buck Showalter waving the white flag. He went to Sean Reed Foley. And you hope he gets out of it, and you hope that Foley, gives you some length, you can get through it. But I think what we've seen from Buck Showalter is he is a manager that manages the marathon. And his number one goal is we're going to win every series we play. So the Mets already won this series. It was in hand. And obviously you would love to sweep it. But you have the Phillies coming in town over the weekend. You get a day off, so you have a chance to really give your bullpen 2 full days, some of those high leverage arms, a real chance to rest. Give Edwin Diaz a blow. Give Seth Lugo and Adam Ottavino a day. Trevor May hasn't been pitching great. Allow him to take 48 hours to clear his head. I think this was one of those days where if the Mets had a chance to win, he would have gone back to some of those guys. But when the game started to get away from him, he decided, you know what? We're going to go with our back end arms, or not, or our bottom of the bullpen type arms, with Lopez, with Sean Reed Foley. Jason Shreve did come on and got some work, but he hadn't pitched, I don't believe, in a couple of days. So you look at what Buck did there. I really do think this is one of those games where he was okay to lose it, and he was hoping his team would battle back offensively. And if they did, maybe he would have gone to the pen with some of the more high leverage guys. But in this instance, I think this was just one of those games where Buck knows that the weekend series is more important. And so they kind of shift their focus to that. We did see the Mets fight, though. We saw Francisco Lindor with an RBI double. They ran into some outs on the bases, being a little bit overly aggressive. Canna and Guillorme both got thrown out in the same inning. That could have given the Mets another run. At the end of the day, though, the Cardinals scored 10. You're not going to win them all. You still won the series. But the fight also spread out onto the field with a benches clearing brawl, which nowadays brawl probably seems like a word a little bit too far on the scale of severity when it comes to describing that fight. But I will talk about it in just a minute, because we got some interesting quotes after the game from Buck Showalter, from Pete Alonso, from Lopez, a lot to get to. So we're going to go through that. But before we do, I want to tell you about Built Bars, the best tasting protein bar ever. They come low in calories, low in sugar, low in fat, but they're high in protein, high in fiber. They also have the incredibly delicious Built Bar Puffs, the first ever protein-infused marshmallows. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat that comes covered in 100% real chocolate with incredible flavors like the cinnamon churro, the coconut marshmallow, and the banana cream pie. All so good. They're sure to be your new favorite treats. And Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So make sure you check out their site often to see what's new by going to built.com. And when you're there, use our promo code LOCK15. You're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Celebrating the special woman in your life? On BlueNile.com, you can easily navigate thousands of fine jewelry options at every price point. Whether she prefers a statement piece or everyday subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every mom. So shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pendant necklaces. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Mets listeners get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day, so use the code Locked On to get it, and that's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, arrives in a discreet package that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace by going to BlueNile.com today. So we got our first real heated benches clearing brawl. I guess there was another one. But the fact that I can't remember who the other one was against this year, that might tell you something about the real impact of that benches clearing incident. Was it against the Phillies? I really don't remember now. And that just shows you where these benches clearing brawls have gone. If you go back and you watch, the 1980s footage of what happened in the day, that was real fights. That was barroom brawls on the baseball field. What we saw between the Mets and the Cardinals today was not that. I almost feel like the entire charade is just pointless nowadays. And Nolan Arenado escalated the whole thing. So let's just get to it. The Mets have continued to get hit time and again this season. And they've had a lot of guys hit in the head. Now, Pete Alonso luckily was out there today after getting hit in the head the night before. He got hit by a changeup. I don't think it was intentional, but it's hard not to get frustrated when time and again these Mets are getting hit. And as Buck Showalter said after the game, quote, I know our player got hit in the head and he went to first base. And I think that is a reason why the Mets could be very upset with the Cardinals and why you could say, even trying to remove any bias, that the Mets were right in this situation because what happened in this game was so mundane compared to what's been happening to the Mets. You have Yohan Lopez who throws one up and in to Nolan Arenado, and it really wasn't even that close. Like, you understand why Nolan Arenado could have looked at that pitch and saw it as a pitch with some intent behind it because it was up and in. But if you really watched it, had there not been any buildup of suspense to that moment, if there hadn't been any chippiness before that with the way the Mets reacted when they got hit by those pitches, Nolan Arenado would have just stepped back and got right back in the box, and it wouldn't have been anything. But because of the circumstances leading up to it, he takes that as intentional, and then he puts on the tough guy act, and he says, come at me, come get me, and he throws Tomas Nido out of the way, and he sparks the brawl. So if there's anyone that's going to get fined or suspended, it's going to be Arenado. Lopez didn't even hit him. And that's why Arenado was thrown out of the game, because he's the one who, in sight of all of it, by his reaction, he simply could have absorbed the fact that, okay, that could have been an intentional pitch, but it didn't hit me. Got back in the box and actually given his team a chance there, but his team's already ahead. So in that count, for him, it doesn't really matter. And he wanted to express his displeasure by almost getting hit in the head. And I get it, but I really don't think that there was crazy intent behind it. If it was a purpose pitch, it was about as well executed of a purpose pitch as you could have, as it really did brush him back a bit. It got in his kitchen, but that's what you would tell a pitcher to do. You would tell him, if you want to send a message, go up and in. If you want to even just attack inside, that is how you do it. That's a perfectly executed pitch to a hot hitter, even to get him out of his comfort zone. And that's actually what Yohan Lopez said after the game. He said, quote, I was happy with that because I knew that I got him out of his comfort zone. And then they took him out of the game because of it. And also Lopez said that it wasn't intentional. So take that for what it's worth. It certainly looked intentional based on those circumstances. But then you hear what Buck Showalter had to say after the game, and he says, "quote There's a lot of emotion flying around. Stop, think this through. There's a lot of ways to show your toughness other than reciprocating, hitting somebody else in the head. Then all of a sudden, somebody's career is over. Somebody's laying there with blood coming out of their ears. How do you really feel? Was it worth it? No, it was kind of stupid. But there's a lot of frustration." So he's kind of expressing an understanding that the Cardinals have a right to be upset when a ball comes near a player's head, but also is basically saying that there was no instruction to do that, and it was just a mistake pitch where he was trying to come inside on him, trying to get him out of his comfort zone, and maybe got a little bit too high and tight. It causes this benches clearing incident. Pete Alonso, though, was not happy because it took three guys to take him down. He said Cabrera grabbed him around the neck. Then there was the coach that threw him down and was holding him back. And Pete was talking about how he was only out there to protect his guys. There was no intent for him to hurt anyone. He said, quote, if I wanted to put somebody in the hospital, I easily could. And I think when Pete says that, he's speaking from a place of, I'm a big guy. I'm pretty comfortable handling myself in those situations and don't mess with me, basically. But I think it just shows you the difference in where things are. If you watch that highlight back of when the bench is clear, Paul Goldschmidt sprints out of the dugout, old school 80s baseball, all shoulders, running out there, trying to get in the mix. But who does he go after? He goes after his teammate, Arenado, to prevent him from getting suspended. So a lot of times there's these instances where the sides converge and everyone runs out of the bullpen and everyone's out of the dugout, but then they sprint head on and then nothing actually happens. That's a brawl nowadays. No one really is throwing punches. Usually the batter's heated, maybe the pitcher's heated. If the two of them meet at the center of all of it before the brawl gets to them, before the teammates get to them, at times maybe you'll see one or two punches thrown, but it just doesn't happen nowadays. So I don't think there's anything too much to it, but I do think that when you have these incidents with a team in your league, that you will, see one more time. I'm sure. I haven't looked at the schedule to get it down exactly, but I'd imagine that there's going to be a series where the Cardinals come to Citi Field this year, and you could meet them in the playoffs too. These are two teams that are atop their respective divisions. This is good for a little bit of a rivalry. We could see these teams meet up in a wild card round or the NLDS or even maybe the NLCS, as we were talking about with Lucas Smith of Locked On Cardinals earlier this week. So I think this is cool to just add a little bit of something to an old rivalry, because as we know, obviously Mets-Cardinals used to be a real rivalry, especially back in the days of Keith Hernandez. But, in this moment, I don't think anything too crazy comes out of this. The Mets are certainly establishing that they will not, take any crap from anybody, and they're going to stand up for themselves, and they're going to defend each other and look out for each other. And I think that is a great team building type sign that has come out of the early season with all of this. And really just the fact that the Mets haven't had any, significant injuries that have come from all these hit by pitches. I do want to look actually real quick here, see if there's an update on JD Davis. He got hit in the ankle and left. So I don't know if there is an update on JD for his birthday as well. It doesn't look like this. Okay, so they said the initial X-rays on JD Davis's ankle is negative. So that's a good sign for the Mets that JD hopefully will only be out for a day or two if he is out at all. And this team will try to continue to roll this weekend against the Phillies, which we'll talk about on tomorrow's show. The host of Locked On Phillies, we actually recorded that crossover today. It's a really fun episode. But we're going to close the show out today looking at the Mets minor leagues. I'm going to give you a farm report on a Thursday, a little bit out of schedule from our normal, I guess, where we plan out the week, but I'll talk about why in just a minute. Before we get to that, though, BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so the reason that I already recorded Friday's episode of Locked On Mets with the host of Locked On Phillies is because I will be traveling tomorrow. For those of you who don't know, I actually reside in South Florida. Got into the Mets because of my dad, so that is the connection there. But I will be heading out to New York this weekend. I'm flying out early in the morning on Thursday to meet up with some of my guys over at Just Baseball and do some work there. And then we will be at the game Friday night, Mets-Phillies. So that'll be exciting. If any of you are at the game, you can certainly hit me up on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. I would love to meet any fans who are in attendance. And then I will also be making a little tour over the next week through the Mets farm system. I'm going to be checking out the Brooklyn Cyclones on Saturday. If you've watched our shows on Friday, our usual Friday farm reports with Jordan Grossman, he's going to be out there at that game with me. So we'll be there for Brett Beatty bobblehead day. And then that'll probably become a future giveaway. I'll likely give that away to the listeners at some point, of Brett Beatty, Brooklyn Cyclones bobblehead. But that's going to be Saturday's game. On Sunday, I will be in Binghamton to check out the Binghamton Rumble Ponies and Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, and Ronnie Mauricio. We're looking forward to that. And then on Tuesday, after an off day for both of those teams in AA and AAA, they'll get back into action, and I will be in Syracuse to check out the Syracuse Mets and, of course, our guy, Mark Vientos. So a lot of excitement next week when it comes to covering the Mets farm system. I'm looking forward to it. But before we get into that, let's look at the numbers right now across the Mets farm for your typical farm report that would come on a Friday, but today it'll come on a Thursday with that series preview coming tomorrow. You look at Brooklyn, my first stop, and right now the guy that I am most looking forward to seeing is Jaylen Palmer, and he has struggled mightily to start the year. He's hitting 147, 293 on base, 206 slugging, 2 doubles, no home runs yet, only scored 1 run, 1 RBI, just a dreadful start. So hopefully he can get things going. The guys that are performing right now, it's JT Schwartz and Rowdy Jordan. You have Schwartz in 277, 460 on base, 406 slugging. You have Jordan, 288 average, 413 on base, 462 slugging on the pitching side. So far, Jose Shashin, I believe that's how you say it, 0.71 ERA in 3 starts. So he has looked pretty good. David Griffin has looked good in his outings, a 2.57 ERA, and Oscar Rojas, a 1.93 ERA on 14 innings pitched. Those guys are the 3 pitchers who have thrown the most in Brooklyn up to this point. Sunday, as I said, I will be in Binghamton, and that is really the game I'm most looking forward to, maybe even more than Mets Phillies at Citi Field. Aaron Nola versus Tyler McGill. I don't know. It might be a dead tie. I do love going to the actual Mets games, but when you have a chance to see 3 top prospects in one game and also maybe catch a Jonas Fargas, you gotta love that. So they got Brett Beatty right now hitting 354, 415 on base, 542 slugging. Considering the slow start that Mark Vientos has gone through at AAA, Beatty is really making a name for herself. You never know. There is a chance we could see Brett Beatty this season. With the way he's playing, he could get a call up. I would imagine he's still going to have at least another month on AA, but if he keeps hitting 350, he's going to force himself up to the next level, and then you're one call away from the show. You got Ronnie Mauricio also off to a great start, hitting 320, 358 on base, 580 slugging. He has 7 doubles and 2 home runs. Alvarez has slowed down a little bit, 289 average on the season, 378 on base, 711 slugging because he still has those 4 home runs and 12 RBIs, but a lot of that came in the first week of the season. He has started to hit a little bit of a slow stretch here where the bat's cooled off, but I wouldn't be too worried about that. You look at some of the other prominent names in AA, Jake Mangum, a guy that we think could at some point factor into this Mets team, but considering Travis Jankowski's early performance, Nick Plummer and Khalil Lee being ahead of him on the depth chart, maybe this is not the year for Mangum, but he's an older prospect that it could, in a pinch, be on the Mets roster this year, but he's got to hit a lot better than he has to start this season. A 188 average, 235 on base, 354 slugging for Jake Mangum. I look at the pitching side. Jose Butto has been the star of that AA team so far. 3 starts, a 0.66 ERA, and 20 strikeouts in 13 2/3 innings pitched. This is a guy that I would not be shocked if we could see him factor into the Mets bullpen near the end of the season. If you just want a live arm and you're not liking what your current guys are giving you, you just want another option when you start to get towards those final months of the season leading into the playoffs. Butto's on the 40, and he's a name to watch. But if you want to keep him in the rotation, he's also added depth. You look at what he's doing to be able to have 20 strikeouts at just 3 walks across 3 starts in those 13 2/3 innings pitched. That's really solid. He's only given up 1 earned run on a homer, 2 runs altogether. So Butto is certainly an interesting name to watch. I'm actually curious now if I might be able to catch Butto on Sunday. His last start came on April 20th. So I'd imagine he's probably going at some point in the next couple of days. So I will likely miss Butto. Closing things out, AAA, not a lot going on there. It's been a rough start to the season. Mark Vientos, someone who I really wish could establish himself because I'd like to see him at the big league level this season. It's just been a rough start for him. 167 average, 246 on base, 315 slugging. Only 1 home run, a triple and 3 doubles across 54 at bats. I think he's going to be fine. He'll heat up as it gets a little bit warmer. He's a Florida kid. That'll probably help him out as well. So we'll see if he turns it around. But the real story in AAA, if we're going to call it that, is Daniel Palka. This is a guy that popped when I saw him in spring training this year. He's a big dude who moves around a little better than you would think, but can really run into some balls. And he has 5 home runs and 5 doubles in the early season, 18 RBIs, 283 hitter, 389 on base, 717 slugging, OPS well over 1,000 in nearly 50 at-bats. He's taken his walks, 8 walks to 10 strikeouts. Palka's a guy that's interesting. Palka's a guy that I think we could see with the Mets at some point this season. I would like Daniel Palka right now on this team a lot more than Robinson Cano. I think Daniel Palka has a much better chance to run into some home runs. I think his bat speed's way better. He's in the prime of his career. And if it wasn't for salary, Palka would be on this roster similar to Jankowski, a combination there of 4A players. But yeah, I think that Palka could certainly have a bigger impact on this team than Cano. So that'll be cool to check him out and see what he looks like. I don't think that he'll get the call, though, unless there's some injuries at some point in the season. He's just going to be stashed away. Also, when it comes to the pitching at Syracuse, the one name I'd like to talk about, Mike Montgomery. A little bit surprised he didn't get the spot start instead of Trevor Williams last weekend. I thought that might have been a better move, but he's now in the 40s, so maybe the Mets didn't want to do that maneuvering with their roster. But he has a 2.65 ERA in 4 starts, and in 17 innings pitched, only 1 walk, 16 strikeouts, a 0.82 WHIP. He's obviously better than the competition in Syracuse. I don't know how great he would fare at the big league level, but I wouldn't be surprised if he would fare better in a start than a Trevor Williams, just simply because he's in that he is in the routine of being a starting pitcher, where Williams has a really tough job. It's not easy to be the last man in a bullpen who at any point could have to be thrown out there to give you some length. The long man role is always difficult. And so those spot starts for those long men are a really tough task to throw you out of whatever routine you've had out of the pen. Now you're starting and you're just trying to give your team something. Sometimes it's better to get the established starter from AAA, and Mike Montgomery is that guy right now, where I think we could see him at some point as well. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Again, tomorrow, a really fun crossover with the host of Locked On Phillies, Connor Thomas. And then just make sure you're following me on Twitter for any updates as I'm on my little New York tour. Again, Citi Field on Friday, Brooklyn on Saturday, Binghamton on Sunday, and Syracuse on Tuesday. Looking forward to a lot of great Mets baseball and Mets minor league baseball. As always, though, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, as I mentioned, at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.